Hi, I'm Tyrone. Like your shoelaces, you Tyrone. Meat. How good is meat? I like meat. Today I'm showing you how to dry age meat. This is a big porterhouse steak. Porterhouse is the thick side of a T-bone. It's a fillet. You've gotten rid of the T-bone and you're left with this beautiful chunk of meat. What dry aging does is a couple of things. It helps the meat get a lot more tender. When an animal dies, its muscles go into a thing called rigor mortis. Given time, this will slowly break down. Dry aging is breaking down the muscles correctly. And there's a couple of different mentalities behind dry aging. It loses a lot of the moisture content from the meat. So it's like boiling down a bottle of wine. You can boil it down in one sense, just by itself, and you'll end up with a brilliantly flavoursome sauce base. Or you can add spices at the start. When dry aging meat, you can safely grow certain molds found in cheese, and you can safely grow certain yeasts. They are each food safe and they each enhance the meat's flavour in their own way. So I have a stick of blue cheese, and you can see that I've begun to push that into the meat, both on the fatty side and on the meaty side. It's important when choosing a piece of meat to have as much left on it at the start as possible, because what happens is you get a thick pellicle on the outside. More on that later. Here, I've got some beer. That has a very deliberate sort of yeast in there, and I've got some non-pasteurized apple juice, which has some wild yeasts in there. I'm leaving this meat, having been rubbed in blue cheese, apple juice, and beer, to absorb that in my fridge for a couple of days. You don't need to do this if you don't want to. I like the way it turns out like that. Right, how to dry age meat? Well, you can either get certain membranous bags, or you can get a fridge specifically for it. I didn't want to do either, so I got a fridge specifically for it. The UMAI bags were ridiculously expensive. They were about $110 for 6. I thought I could do that just rednecking it through other means. So I did a search for fridges on my local marketplace, and when you're searching for a fridge, the one that I found was only about $50. Look for one that has wire racks. You want good airflow through your fridge. This helps the dry aging process. If you have glass racks, not only will the meat be sitting on something solid and not get any air on it, the glass racks will discourage airflow through the entirety of the fridge. One like this will do well. Another thing that I've done is I've bought a temperature control so that I can set the thermostat as low as possible and control the temperature separately. What you can do is get a hygrometer to measure the humidity and a thermometer to measure the temperature, and then set the thermostat accordingly. I found it easier just to get a temperature control specific for this. Also, you'll want to be able to control the humidity of your fridge. Self-indicating silica beads do that perfectly. They absorb moisture from the air within the fridge. I bought some off eBay. So far the total is less than these UMAI bags. Also, a couple of USB fans to circulate the air through your fridge, and you're laughing. I found 2 for $7-8 and put them at either end of my fridge. One at the top pointing down, one at the bottom pointing up. I don't think I went for that one, but I went for one very similar. Anyhow, This meat has been in my fridge for a couple of days, just absorbing the blue cheese, just absorbing the yeasts from the beer and apple juice. I've washed it, rubbed it down. You don't need to do this. In fact, you'll get a more blue cheesy result at the end if you don't do that. I choose to hang my meat in my fridge rather than have it sitting on wire racks. It's important when doing that to tie it up. The way you do these butcher's loops is you do slip knots around one side and just chain them one to another. Then on the other side, measure out the amount of string you'll need and then add some. Then loop loops through the loops from the slip knots. Then tie it up at the end. As I said, I'm hanging this, so the hooks that I will put into this meat will go through some of the twine as well. Another thing that you can put in your fridge, which will encourage food safety, is a little UV light. What that does is kills yeasts and bacteria without necessarily harming the meat. Also, you can pick these up off eBay for a few bucks. Search for aquarium specific ones if you want. Into the fridge, this is going in for about 60 days. Anything over 40 and these flavours will have begun to have developed and the meat tenderness will have upped itself. Those are the words that I'm trying to say. Also in the fridge, as I said, you want to maintain a fairly stable humidity. You want to maintain a fairly stable temperature. To maintain the temperature, I've got the temperature control. To maintain the humidity, I've put a hygrometer in the door of the fridge and these self-indicating silica beads. These will continue absorbing the moisture from the air through the fridge, and they will eventually turn a pink colour, which you're about to see. The cool thing about these self-indicating silica beads is you can reset them. Pour them into a slightly more sturdy tray. In fact, I bought these trays especially. And put them in an oven for whatever your packet suggests. Mine says warm oven for an hour and 10 or so, and they'll turn back from pink to the blue colour that they started off as. It's translucent blue. When they're warm, they're not as translucent. Don't put these trays into the fridge as they are. Instead, let them cool down. If you put it into the fridge, it will dramatically alter the temperature. That's not what you want. Temperature is important. Just like when you're smoking meats, having the door open is a horrible idea because it's bad. All right, 60 days, sharpen your knife, just like that. It's an amazing sharpening stone in that it's not even stone and it sharpens without even touching the knife. Cut off the twine and observe your meat. It's interesting. The fat on the top, it's turned a lot more almost buttery compared to the underside that's a very leathery, solid thing. That is to be expected, and the inside will, as it's exposed to oxygen for the first time, turn a more magnificent, radiant, meaty red. Bag them up individually. Eat it soon. If you freeze the meat, it will get rid of some of the developed flavours that you've developed. Developed flavours you've developed. That works. When you are ready to eat these, cut off the pellicle. But don't throw it out. That would be silly. These bad boys are full of flavour. Just get rid of the top layer, anything that's slightly off-coloured, and put it into a separate bag. I went back to the butcher that I bought the porterhouse off and asked him to grind it up, which he was most amicable to when I gave him a porterhouse steak. These grindings are great in burger mince. Mix it 1 part of this pellicle to 4 parts burger mince. Then, when you're ready, cook your steaks. If you don't know how to do that, I've got an absolutely brilliant video on how to cook a steak like a YouTube pro. That being said, like, share, subscribe.